And welcome once again to another edition of Ask the AD. I'm Dave Horger. This is Athletic Director Greg Christopher. We have some exciting news to begin with today. We broke just a few moments ago, and that's the hockey conference story. So tell us, Greg, what that's all about.
Well, we joined the WCHA. That's the short version, but we are excited about the direction, and it's nice to have it put to bed to some degree. But again, of all the options we had in front of us, this was the one that developed the most. And we always knew, even from the start of the conversation, that this would be a great fit for hockey. The on-ice, the competitive piece, where we have that opportunity to compete for championships. And that really was the decision that drove, or that was the factor that drove the decision. You know, what was going to be best for us from a hockey standpoint.
Okay, the other options, obviously you must have taken them somewhat seriously.
Very good. Yeah.
For it to take the process a little bit longer than some of the other schools.
Yeah, and I think, you know, we were open with the people that were involved. I know for fans on the outside who don't necessarily have all the information all the time, or not in the middle of the conversation, you know, some people were probably a little impatient and thought we were taking too long. But in the sense of making sure we made the right decision, and when you think in the context that this is a decision that will probably affect us for several decades, I don't know that an extra week or week and a half is going to give anybody too much heartburn.
Okay. Now there, I suspect, would be some casual hockey observers that might think this is a step down, major step down from the CCHA to the WCHA, because Michigan, Ohio State, these Big Ten schools will not be involved. But that isn't necessarily the case.
I think that's proven out with time. You know, that it doesn't matter necessarily what the wrapping paper of your school budget or the size of your school matters. I mean, when a school like Bemidji State can make it to the Frozen Four, and you've got schools, you know, whether they're Denver or Bemidji or schools of all shapes and sizes playing hockey, once you get on the ice, it's a pretty big equalizer. So we're not terribly concerned about that wrapping paper as much as the competitive piece and where's the best place for BGSU to be able to compete for a hockey championship.
And I suspect there will be BG hockey fans that are wondering, will the Ohio States, the Michigans, and the Michigan States, will they still be on the schedule, and will we be able to play them again? That's
our plan. You know, we'll see how time plays out. You know, the conversations we've had with the Big Ten schools and even some of our brethren in the MAC has been that we intend to continue to play those series, although they'll be non-conference games. I think you've heard me say this before. I think long term, the Big Ten schools especially, at the end of the day, hockey will track the same way basketball and football have done 2 and 3 decades ago. That long term, when you're drawing 6, 7, 8,000 people plus to your building, it's going to be tough for you to leave your building. And so that's long term, how long it takes us to get there, if at all. You know, maybe I'm wrong. But our plan is to continue to play those schools.
Most people seem to be very, very pleased with the Stroh Center. Mm-hmm. At this point, we've really only had a couple of major events in there, big events. Talk, if you would, about how that has gone, and from an operational perspective, might there be some changes?
Always be operational changes would be the short answer, and I think you know, it's kind of like moving into a new home. You know, it takes several months or maybe even a year for you to get things the way you want them. And I think fans will continue to see us as we go through this year. You'll see some visible changes, you know, things like graphics and additions here and there as we fine-tune the building. And I do think you know, we've already made some operational changes for the flow of fans, where they can come in, where they can go out after games and so forth. And I'm willing to bet that we'll continue to make those changes. Feedback is always welcome. We made changes from the time we had the Sanctus Real concert to the time we had volleyball to our next volleyball game. We made changes literally overnight in one case of how we had things flow. At the end of the day, I think the building's new, it's different, there are a lot of positives. There are some things that are changed from what we had at Anderson Arena, and that may be different, and in some cases may not be as good. But overall, certainly, it's an improvement. But again, we're always going to try to do what we can within the constraints of the building to make it a great fan experience for the people that can watch our games.
And one of the things that will be done pertaining to people that are concerned a bit about the steps.
Mhm.
There's an elevator in the building, and so far with those two major events, that elevator has been
Yeah,
good enough.
Yeah, people have asked specifically about the elevator, perhaps the most, and I'm not at all trying to be flip with the answer here, but the elevator in Stroh is, and that was mandated. You know, when you built Anderson, you didn't need an elevator, and we do have one more elevator in the Stroh Center than we had in Anderson, and from that standpoint, the N is small. We've only had two big events, like you said, in there, but so far the flow of the 4,000 person crowd and the 2,900 person crowd of using the elevator has been just fine. But again, we'll continue to fine tune things based on feedback and what we see and what our fans experience. And you know, we're always trying to get better as far as how we run our games. And I would say that's, I don't know that you ever run a perfect event, but we certainly want the experience to be positive for the fans.
Let's talk a bit about soccer and about soccer lights. Give us the timetable on when we might see those lights going on.
Yeah, nothing's changed. We're looking at mid-October. We're getting a few more questions now that people see things being torn up. But everything is on schedule and on time and on budget. But we expect to have the lights up sometime in the next 2 weeks. We have a game scheduled for October 22nd at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, I think it is, somewhere in that time span. So they better be up by then.
Okay. 3 people will be inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Yep.
I believe it's on the 22nd of October. A great talk, if you would, about the process there and it's going to be an after-game event this time.
This time it will be. I think we were talking beforehand, in the 5 years I've been here, we've done Hall of Fame as a Friday dinner, we've done it as a game day dinner, we've done brunches, and you know, so I don't know if we're wedded to any specific mousetrap, but this will be a post-game event. We'd love to have a huge crowd there, so anybody's welcome. We wanted to do it after a football game, or tie it to a football game because of the crowds that are usually associated with that. The program itself will look a lot like any other Hall of Fame program. We'll let each of the 3 inductees be able to give their remarks and their thanks and some of their stories, which are always a lot of fun. And we'll pull together some sort of you know, video or slideshow that represents them as well. So the program itself, probably a lot the same. The wrapping paper, to use that phrase again, is going to be a little bit different in hopes that we can get, frankly, a bigger crowd there and by tying it to the football game. The process to get the 3 inductees was much, you know, we've got a Hall of Fame committee, and that committee goes through its conversations, and we end up with the inductees. Very deserving, obviously,
sure.
And it's always a fun process to go through.
And to close it off today, how about your thoughts on the fall sports and how we're doing so far?
So far, so good. You'd always like to win more. Winning is better than losing. I mean, those, again, are kind of the cliche phrases. But you're right. A lot of people have made comments about, wow, teams are off to a great start. And they are. And I'm not taking anything away from any of the fall sports. But just as, you know, last year, you know, when things, especially some of the major sports, didn't get off to great starts or had uneven seasons, you know, you can't get too caught up in the wins and losses when things are going, you know, poorly, the same way as when things are going well. And I've said this time and time again, what you're looking for more directly is that directional track. You know, where are teams headed? So, you know, even through a tough football season or a tough hockey season last year, or until basketball kind of found its way and got a little more even when they got into conference play, you were looking at the direction of where the programs are headed and looking at the rosters, looking at how teams are progressing, and you're starting to see that now manifest itself this year. And obviously hockey's just getting ready to start, basketball season's just getting ready to start practice, but you feel very good about how things are playing out in a directional way. You still have to step on the field and try to win that game, that specific moment, but you do have to try to step back and look at things in a more global perspective than any specific one game.
It's Athletic Director Greg Christopher, and we're coming back. We'll do this again in about a month.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.